We know most American sports fans have 24/7 access to wall-to-wall coverage about the NFL and NBA drafts, but that kind of media imprint has never existed for the NWSL draft, and we've got someone who's here to change all of that. I know Grant and I both utilize the research and in-depth coverage afforded to us by the SoccerDossier. There's a great draft recap up on the site right now that details how accurate this year's dossier was in predicting who'd be selected in the 2024 NWSL draft. So we welcome founder, editor-in-chief, all the above, head honcho of the really great, super informative website on all things NWSL draft, our very, very first guest, the history of the Into the Channel pod, Mr. Christopher Garish. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
All right, excellent. So let's just get right into it, man, because I thought it was interesting to watch. We get to see all the clips of these different players in college. I'd like us to kind of start with the top of the draft. In our last episode of Into the Channel, we talked about a really high hit rate, it feels like, for like number one picks. Previous number ones like Crystal Dunn, Rose Lavelle, Sophia Smith, Naomi Girma. Who should we be looking at the top of this year's draft, Christopher, as kind of like a potential club transforming player or maybe even an MVP level player in the future?
Sure. I mean, I think the top of this draft was very good. We had, I think it was 3 or 4 players declared early this year, which is not a usual thing. It's not the NFL or the NBA, right, where everybody in the NBA draft is like 19 and you come out, and if you're a senior, that means you're not good, right? So like that's not the case in the NWSL. So if you're declaring early, it means that you're probably going to get picked very early. So we had that at the top of this draft. Ali Sentnor went first, Savy King went second. Both players who declared early from North Carolina. I think it's a little too early to know if anybody's going to be an MVP or any of that kind of stuff. But I think if I had to pick somebody who had a chance, I'm picking Croix Bethune. She went third overall. Some injury history in college, but overall, there's a lot of stuff to like about her. She's great on the ball. She can score. She's a very technical passer and just somebody who's very comfortable when you watch her on the pitch.
Croix Bethune, where was she in your mock draft? I feel like she was pretty high.
I think she went third. I think she went where she actually went, which is fun.
Nice. Had that one pegged.
Yeah.
Anybody that she reminds you of in today's game?
I think if we were going to pick somebody, it might be she's an attacking midfielder. So if you're going to go, good attacking midfielders, you're going to pick Rose Lavelle or somebody of that nature. Not a huge comparison guy because everybody's different, right? Everybody has different stuff. But if you're going to pick a name to be associated with, I think that'd be a good one.
Sure, and we will not hold you to these. There will not be freezing cold tweets 2 years from now. I'll be like, why is your cousin Christopher?
There will be. There will be. If you put anything on record, it'll come back to you.
All right. Well, audience, take it easy on Christopher. He's a guy.
Yeah, come on.
Come on, give a guy a break. What about at the very top, Ali Sentnor, who went 1? Anybody that she reminds you of?
I'm not sure. I don't know. She's, can play attacking midfielder. She can play forward. She scored a lot of goals at North Carolina. She had a lot of assists at North Carolina. I think she had 11 goals and 11 assists last year. Somebody can fact check me. But somebody who can do both of those things is very valuable, right? So Utah got a good pick with the first overall pick there.
When we look at a defender like Savy King and her going so high, obviously Bay FC, they're starting things out, right? They're an expansion franchise. What do you like about Savy King's game that could at least have Bay FC view her as like a cornerstone type of player?
I think it's interesting looking at her and looking at Maycee Bell, who went 14th overall. Maycee Bell is like a more prototypical center back. She's like 6 feet tall. She's great in the air, all that kind of stuff. And Savy King is like 4 years younger, so that's something already that you're looking at, right? You're saying, hey, this person's, got a lot of youth national team experience already, just like Ali Sentnor does. Maycee Bell also has that, but Savy King's just a hardworking player and good tackler, and she's younger than everybody else in this draft class. So I think that's one of the things that put her up at the top.
You mentioned that at the top, this is not your typical one and done situation for these footballers. Is it just as simple as, I guess in Bay FC's case, we're an expansion franchise, we're not expected to be good right away. Let's take kind of like a long view at these things, or were there more younger players taken in the later rounds as well?
No. So I think we had 3. So Ali Sentnor, Savy King, and then Ali Lemos all declared, and they all went in the first round. That's typically what you see. I don't really know the process for these players when they're coming out and being like, hey, should I come out early? Will I get drafted? That sort of thing. Or if you're like, Corbin Albert, who's just like a sophomore at Notre Dame and she went to PSG I don't know the process there, but like typically we've seen in the past, if you're not a senior and you're in the draft, you're going in the first round. That's what happens. So whether it's the youth component or just that you have to be that good, teams see that and you're gone in the first round.
So it kind of seems like if you are ahead of schedule, you're probably on that top European club path, or you say, I'm going to kind of hold out and I'm going to declare for the NWSL draft as an underclassman. And I feel pretty good about where I'm going to go because I've got this other offer, and that's another kind of like stamp of approval from elsewhere.
Right. So like on the site, I track a couple things, and one of the markers that I track is playing time as a freshman. And so if you're playing a lot as a freshman, it's usually a good indicator of like, oh, you'll be playing a lot later, and you're playing against people who are older than you and maybe more physically, not better, but just like stronger because they're older. They have more years of coaching and training and all that kind of stuff, right? So if you can hold your own earlier, then you're going to be against better players and you're going to be better later. I did some writing for American football a while ago, and it's from college to pro stuff. And one of the markers of like, hey, somebody who's transitioning well is a lot of freshman playing time. That's a thing. So I use that for this site as well.
Interesting. And you've been at SoccerDossier for at least a few years now, right? So some of the seniors that have gotten drafted, I imagine they've been on your radar for a little bit.
Yeah, the whole COVID thing really kind of threw a wrench in some stuff. So now we have super seniors and fifth-year seniors and fourth-year seniors and a whole bunch of stuff, right? But yeah, some of like Croix, Bethune, or Maycee have been in the mock drafts for 2 years now.
In that time, aside from your site, have you seen like a proliferation of some information in terms of like, I mean, you mentioned like you don't have like a total insight into how these teams are drafting, but is the world of NWSL draft information, has it been expanding over the past few years?
For sure. So when I started this site, like I think this is my third year, so three-ish years ago, I did it because there just wasn't really any information available. Like I'm used to, the NBA or the NFL where you can just like look at a mock draft for like 2 years from now and that kind of stuff. So I was like, where's anything? And I couldn't find anything. So I watched my first NWSL draft, which was the 2020 Sophia Smith draft. And I wanted to like get any information before that, and I couldn't. So after that draft, for some reason, I reached out to like the panelists, Lori Lindsay and Jen Cooper, and I sent Jen Cooper an email, and I was just like, I have 1,000 questions. Would you be cool enough to answer any of them? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, first of all, insane that I would get a response, right? Like if I emailed Mel Kiper, I wouldn't get like a nice response back. I don't know. I don't know anything about Mel Kiper, but it was crazy to me that like this community already was very welcoming, right? So I talked to Jen for a little bit, and then I was like, I bet I could, I don't know, do some stuff with some numbers and throw some stuff together. And so I did that, and I just did it on the internet so I could hold myself accountable and hopefully provide some stuff. I didn't know if it was going to be a huge flop, if it was the stuff I was putting out there was going to work at all, but it's just gotten better over time. So that's nice.
That it has, Grant and I, similar origin story. We're like, where are the two American bros talking about women's football? Just couldn't find it.
Exactly.
And we're like, you know what? Let's go. Dust off the mic and we're ready.
That's right.
Yeah, so we're doing the Lord's work over here, obviously. So
I guess I didn't like actually answer that question though. So I'll answer the question. Like, yes, I have seen more people. Like, there's more mock drafts now, right? I saw a couple this year. It was great. I know Chris Henderson exists. I try not to follow him on anything because I feel like it would like taint my results, and I don't want other stuff in there, right? So I'll look at his stuff like after the draft, but I try not to look at other things before the draft because I don't want to be biased towards anything.
You guys are on good terms though, right?
I've never talked to him.
Okay, so not on bad terms.
Not on bad terms. I don't know him.
Okay,
we're both we both have Chris names. I feel like we should be friends, but I don't know him.
All right, excellent. See, now into the channel, we're doing some reporting. No beef between Christopher and
yeah, there you go.
And Chris Henderson. All right, excellent. Got to
breaking news.
So one thing I think is interesting, and you talk about like the past 3 years, and you feel like you're starting to pinpoint some stuff. Like I noticed. Well, you talk about holding yourself accountable. I liked in your recap article, you have like graphs. Like there is like data in this article about the dossier and kind of who's getting picked. So this is the opportunity, Christopher. Please, can you flex a little bit? Because I thought it was super impressive, the number of players in each round that you were nailing. Can you let the audience know like how many you were getting correct in these rounds?
Sure. I think the first round, I only missed out on the 3 early declares, and that's something that I'm going to have to look into next year and the following years. I don't necessarily have a plan for that because I can't just go through every team and be like, who could do this? I already go through every team page as it is, so it's hard to add more players to that. But yeah, just missed out on the 3 early declares for the first round. Only missed 2 players in the second round, 2 players in the third round, and then 7 players in the fourth round. The fourth round kills me every year.
The fourth round's got to be super tough, though, right? Because, I mean, people are taking flyers. I know my club, OL Reign, kind of reached for, I don't want to call it a reach because I don't want to act like I know anything about McKenna Carr's history. But, like, you could tell the analysts on the broadcast were like, oh, okay, I guess that makes sense. Like, she played at University of Washington. But I got to think teams are kind of, like, really deep in the scouting roles at that point, that late in the draft.
Yeah, I didn't know a whole lot about McKenna Carr either, so I wouldn't have been helpful on air. But yeah, she wasn't. She was definitely one of the 7.
Even the first couple rounds, there were players drafted that didn't have like highlights packages or like age details. You could tell the difference between the draft cards on the main telecast.
For sure, it's gotten a lot better though. Like when I first started doing stuff a couple of years ago, there like wasn't highlights. Everybody was talking about like team needs and not less necessarily like what the player is good at or like who the player is or any of that kind of stuff. So it was one of the first questions I asked was just like, hey, how come there's not like, there wasn't a big board, like there was nothing. And I was like, it'd be helpful if there was like anything that a person watching could like look at and know like, hey, who would my team want if they needed a box-to-box midfielder or whatever. But now they have a big board. There's highlights for some players. It's way better than it was a couple years ago. So very grateful for that.
Yeah, still some work to do. NWSL 2025 draft. To the powers that be, let's get Mr. Christopher Garish, a list of those early declares. Just so, I mean, come on. You're sending them to the teams. The teams know who's available. Help us out here.
It's crazy that the draft registration list is 2 days before the draft. So it's like that's why I try to put this thing out because it's like, oh, let's put a list out in November, and that gives you a couple months if you're like trying to do content or whatever you're trying to do for the draft, and that's helpful. But like 2 days before is kind of rough.
Did you have anybody reach out to you from the league or from teams or at the scouting level?
No, I've talked to some agents, but in terms of teams or league, no.
That's badass though. That's super cool. I've already asked you hacky sports radio question, who could be a potential MVP? So let me do another one.
Great.
So we have a pretty solid listener viewer base over in the Nordics, over in Europe. And so I'm going to maybe over-explain a little bit for our pals over there. In American sports, when you have a draft system, players who are taken later in the draft, we often use the term sleepers to describe those people. That's somebody who you may not think is going to be an excellent player, and they might end up kind of bubbling up comparatively to other players who may have been selected before them. So I have to ask the question, Christopher. You got any sleepers? Are there anybody in that second round, anybody in that third round who you kind of look at and say, now this is a type of player who might be able to walk in and have a pretty big impact on their squad?
For sure. It was very surprising to me that Felicia Knox went in the third round. She was somebody that we'd mocked in the first. She's somebody who has a lot of youth national team experience, and that's not usually something that lasts in these drafts. Those players are already scouted a little bit for you, right? If you've been on a youth national team for, you're playing the U17s, the U20s, the U23s, that's already somebody else has been like, here's a stamp of approval for this player. So those are players that usually go earlier. She has that. She's been multiple-time All-American in Alabama. She had 20 assists in her junior year, right? It's just like somebody who's very good. And to go in the third round is kind of crazy. So whether that happened naturally or she was just like, hey, I want to go to Angel City, and that was their first pick, I don't know. But like that was a big sleeper. Every year we have players who are not American fall because I don't know if you need international slots on players, and typically teams want to use those unestablished people that they're bringing in that can really make an impact right away, right? So we'll get like a couple Canadians in the third round or the fourth round every year. Zoe Burns, Amanda West, Maya Jones. Any of those players typically fall because they're, not American, not because they're bad at soccer. So keep an eye on those, and I think those are some good ones.
Nice. Good looking out. Which club do you think took home the best haul of players? So obviously we saw a lot of players drafted. We saw some trades, combination of the two. To borrow a little NFL, NBA parlance, who gets the A+ from SoccerDossier?
I think either expansion team did really well. Washington did really well. I know they had a lot of trades that went into this as well. They don't have Ashley Sanchez anymore, but they have Croix Bethune now, so that's pretty cool. I don't know if that was like a salary thing or what, but they got a kind of a direct replacement there, so that's nice. But yeah, I'd say either of the expansion teams did a great job, and Washington also very good.
So Dino's wearing his Orlando Pride shirt. He's obviously based in the lovely state of Florida. I am up here in the Pacific Northwest, right in Seattle. So
Nice.
totally kind of myopic Homer question here. The Reign, I think it was $125,000 in allocation money for Sam Meza. What are your thoughts, if I may ask?
Sure, Sam Meza is good. This is a very strong attacking midfield class. So Sam Meza is definitely one of those top tier players. You lost Rose, so that's a bummer. Mm-hmm. And nobody's going to be a direct replacement for a senior team national player, right? National team player, right? But Sam Meza is very good. Has youth national team experience. Can try to play where Rose was.
Excellent. How about Dino's Pride?
You got Ali Lemos in the first round. You're great. You're good. That's good.
Prodigy.
Cori Dyke, Big Ten Defender of the Year. Great pick in the second round.
All right, so we nailed our first 2 rounds. You heard it here. A pluses for AFC.
For both you guys.
Washington, Orlando Pride throws. Let's go.
Everybody. Great. Honestly, overall, pretty good draft for most of the teams. It was a solid draft class. Nobody was making a crazy reach for anybody, at least in my opinion. So overall, a pretty well-run draft overall. Kansas City took 2 goalkeepers. If I was going to say something weird, I'd be like, Kansas City, I don't know if we need to draft 2 goalkeepers, but I don't know what's going on over there.
Kansas City making maybe some questionable decisions up and down the organization. Well, yeah, we'll leave that one where it is. Maybe that one doesn't make the show. That's more of a personal opinion.
I don't know.
Okay, this has been an incredibly informative interview, and we appreciate you being so generous with your time, Christopher. If you're interested in the future of the NWSL, who's going to get drafted, where they're going to go, 2025 and beyond, look no further. Our guy, Mr. Christopher Garish, he's all over it. SoccerDossier is a must follow on X @SoccerDossier, and check out the website, SoccerDossier.com. Christopher, thanks again, man, for joining us. Please remind everyone what we can expect from SoccerDossier into the future.
I think in a couple months I should have a preseason dossier out. I did it last year. I think I put it out in March or something. The hit rate was not great this year. I think it was somewhere around 50% of the players in the draft were on that list. But that's something I'll be looking into as well. So maybe in a couple months that'll be out. The draft recap is up right now if you want to see how the dossiers performed. There are some fun graphs and stuff. That's usually my favorite, one of my favorite things to do. But in terms of content, it's kind of over for me now. I'm going to take a break. I'm going to go to sleep. I'm good now.
Well earned, though, man. And I'll say, I appreciate a man who holds himself to a high standard. I would think pre-season still getting 50%. I think that sounds pretty good, but it sounds like you're playing up here, high-level stuff. So I don't blame you for holding yourself to that standard.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mel Kiper's 1.0. He's well under 50, so you're crushing it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thanks again, Christopher.
Yeah, no problem.